On a quiet afternoon in Crofton, Maryland, in 2011, Jodi Torok was home alone in her apartment, chatting on the phone with a friend in Pittsburgh. She was several weeks pregnant with a baby she believed was fathered by her boyfriend of about a year, Charles Brandon Martin. Torok had just told Martin the news and said she planned to seek child support. She also threatened to tell his wife or other partner. Martin was furious. He demanded an abortion. She refused. A few weeks later, on the day of the shooting, Martin texted Torok asking what time she got off work. She replied that she was off that day, so she'd be home. Shortly before 3 p.m., there was a knock at her door. A man claiming to be a salesman was there. Torok hung up to answer, promising to call her friend back. She never did. Her friend grew worried, called Torok's housemate Jessica Higgs, who rushed home and found Torok unconscious on the floor, shot in the head. Torok survived, but her unborn baby did not, and she suffered serious, permanent injuries. No forced entry, no signs of robbery, just a .380 caliber shell casing, a bullet, and a very strange object. A Gatorade bottle that had been heavily modified with layers of medical and duct tape, a rectangular hole cut in the top, and a jagged hole in the bottom. Police and experts later testified it looked exactly like a homemade silencer. The evidence tying Martin to the crime was strong. He owned a .380 semi-automatic handgun that could have fired the bullet. Multiple witnesses had seen him with a small semi-automatic pistol in the weeks before the shooting. DNA on the modified bottle was a big deal. A hair on the tape could not be ruled out as Martin's. It excluded 99.94% of the North American population, and trace DNA on the bottle's mouth also could not exclude him. A key witness, Michael Bradley, testified that on the afternoon of the shooting, he, his brother, Martin, and another man were at a friend's house smoking marijuana. He saw medical tape and a Gatorade bottle being taken upstairs, right around the time the homemade silencer was likely being made. Another witness said she had seen Martin on a laptop owned by his employer looking up information about gun silencers. Neighbors heard no gunshot, which fit the silencer theory. The jury convicted Martin as an accessory before the fact to attempted murder. Martin appealed. The Maryland Court of Special Appeals affirmed the conviction in 2014. Then came post-conviction proceedings in state court. Martin raised a Brady claim. The prosecution had failed to turn over a forensic report on that employer laptop showing it had not been used to search for gun silencers. That report would have impeached the witness who claimed she saw Martin looking up silencers. The state post-conviction trial court initially ordered a new trial, but the Maryland Appellate Court reversed. It ruled that, even if the report had been disclosed, there was no reasonable probability the trial result would have been different, because the rest of the evidence against Martin was overwhelming. Under Brady versus Maryland, that's the key test for materiality. Would the undisclosed favorable evidence have created a reasonable probability of a different outcome? Martin then turned to federal court, filing a habeas corpus petition under 28 U.S.C. Section 2254. The federal district court granted him relief and ordered a new trial. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit affirmed that decision. The state, represented by Christopher Klein, superintendent of the Anne Arundel County Department of Detention Facilities, and other officials, petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court for a writ of certiorari. On January 26, 2026, the Supreme Court granted the petition, took the case on the papers without oral argument, and issued a summary reversal in a per curiam opinion. Vote count: 8-1. Majority author and reasoning: per curiam, that is, an unsigned opinion by the court, joined by 8 justices. The reasoning is straightforward and emphatic. The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, ADPA, imposes a highly deferential standard on federal habeas review of state court decisions. A federal court can grant relief only if the state court's ruling was contrary to or involved an unreasonable application of clearly established federal law. Here, the Maryland Appellate Post-Conviction Court accurately summarized Brady precedents, correctly stated the materiality rule, reasonable probability of a different result, and applied it to conclude the undisclosed laptop report was immaterial given the mountain of other evidence: DNA, the gun, the silencer-making testimony, motive, and the text messages. The Supreme Court stressed that even if federal judges might have weighed the impeachment evidence differently, AEDPA does not allow them to substitute their own judgment. Federal courts must give state courts the benefit of the doubt and can only step in for extreme malfunctions. The Fourth Circuit's analysis strayed from that deference by essentially reweighing the evidence and second-guessing the state court's reasonable conclusion. Therefore, AEDPA required denial of habeas relief. The Supreme Court granted certiorari and reversed the Fourth Circuit's judgment, sending the case back for proceedings consistent with its opinion. The court cited a string of its own recent per curiam summary reversals to remind lower courts that this kind of error keeps happening and must be corrected. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson would have denied the petition for writ of certiorari. There was no full dissenting opinion issued. She simply noted her position that the court should not have taken the case up at all. In short, Klein v. Martin is another clear reminder from the Supreme Court that AEDPA is not optional. When a state court reasonably applies established constitutional law like Brady, federal courts must respect that, even when the facts are sympathetic and the evidence of a constitutional violation is close. The decision keeps the focus on deference to state courts and prevents federal habeas from becoming a second full-blown appeal. That's the complete story of how this attempted murder conviction, a single undisclosed forensic report, and a fight over habeas standards made it all the way to the nation's highest court. This concludes this presentation. If you have thoughts on this case and judgment, do comment below the video. Also, to receive notifications of future cases, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Please share the channel link with your friends and peers that you think may be interested in or benefit from it. Thank you.